Tonight's big story. Pressure is mounting on the government to step in further and help drive down grocery prices. Consumer New Zealand has launched a petition urging the government to go as far as creating a state-owned supermarket wholesaler. It says the government needs to be brave to help Kiwis tackle growing grocery bills. Our supermarkets are raking it in. A Commerce Commission report revealed foodstuffs and Woolworths make more than $1 million a day in profit, while Kiwis are paying more at the checkout.
Well, they're going up, aren't they?
It's pretty insane at the moment. Very expensive. I find myself overlooking lots of green foods because they're just expensive.
The Commerce Commission says competition is the answer, but the two grocery giants gobble up wholesale supplies, locking out new players.
It's been incredibly difficult for Supi to access wholesale supply. It's been a 3-year journey for us.
So Consumer New Zealand has launched a petition calling on the government to either regulate supermarket wholesalers or create a state-owned wholesaler.
We have an opportunity here to do something about this, and yet we encourage the Minister to be brave.
We'll find out just how brave the government will be when it announces its plan of attack by the end of the month. Well, for more on this, let's go live now to Richard Mead, an Honorary Senior Research Fellow at AUT. Richard, thanks for joining us tonight. Now, a state-owned supermarket, is that an idea worth considering?
It's hard to think of compelling examples around developed countries where we see this. If your best examples are countries like Cuba, Venezuela and the former Soviet Union, you have to wonder if this really is something for New Zealand.
So what about it is a bad idea? Why doesn't it work?
Well, it's, as I say, hard to think of models where you have state-provided multi-product wholesalers being great providers of goods, the right sort of goods at the right time, at the right price for consumers. We simply don't have compelling examples of this. The dominant model of supermarket supply around the world, at least in developed countries, is the model that we have. And it may have its shortcomings and there's understandable concern about prices, but asking for the government to be the wholesaler to save us all, I think, is a big stretch.
Yeah, so there are some shortcomings, as we've discussed. What actually are the biggest barriers to lowering grocery prices?
Well, really, as the Commerce Commission has identified, if you want to get better pricing in the supermarket and grocery sector, we need to have another major competitor. And that's not just at the retail end of the industry, that's also at the wholesale end. And so that really requires entry by another operator. It could be an operator like the Warehouse if they decided to go large and get into the grocery sector. It could be Costco that's already entering Auckland. So we're seeing already the signs of emerging competition that could be quite strong and quite disruptive that might actually change the game quite a bit.
Is Consumer New Zealand right, though, to be putting pressure on the government to intervene?
I think it's perfectly understandable for them to be doing what they're doing, but we should only be pressuring the government to do something if there's something useful for the government to do. And I'm a bit concerned that the measures that have been proposed are in fact counterproductive. They're the sorts of measures that could actually hurt consumers rather than benefit them. So
what could the government do then that would be useful?
Well, already looking at things like making sure that there aren't regulatory barriers to setting up a new chain of supermarkets, for example. So this is where the Resource Management Act itself is actually a bit of a regulatory hurdle that can take an awfully long time to get retail sites consented. It can make sure the environment is conducive to entry by overseas players, for example, or domestic players expanding. There's not much actually more it needs to be doing in that regard. When the fundamental constraints are really the size of our market and our low population density. But as technologies improve, these are transport technologies, delivery technologies, technologies for managing goods and also for predicting people's demand, we should expect to see some sort of entry by non-traditional players anyway. So we know Amazon's entering overseas in various segments in the grocery supply chain. And we could imagine that could actually happen here in New Zealand, perhaps even supplied from Australia, but we're not there yet.
OK. Competition could well save the day. Let's hope so. Richard, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.